Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for some coffee and conversation. We're super glad to have you here. And we're going to jump into the conversation part because hopefully you've been sipping on that coffee.
We continue to see more openings. Is there any key lessons learned that you feel that that the UK has done things exceptionally well that we could learn in the US for an attraction that hasn't yet to open?
Yeah, and I should preface that by saying one of the greatest things has been that we've been putting on weekly webinars now for, 16, 17 weeks, hosted by Gateway Ticketing, and they've been absolutely invaluable, not just to attractions here in the UK, where we've been able to share best practice from those attractions which have already opened, but also to understand each other's insights and where we've gone wrong as well as where we've gone right. So thank you very much. Here's a rough assemblage of things that we've learned. So number one is the toilet thing. If you don't have toilets, just don't open, because that is the number one thing. Secondly, people have been pent up. There's a pent up desire to go to visitor attractions. People have been in lockdown for 3.5 months. And although visitor attractions have been physically closed, they've been digitally open. So one of the things that we've also seen is real creativity on the part of museums and galleries in particular, but also zoos and safari parks and theme parks, about making sure that their offering is digitally accessible. So one of the things that we've seen here in the UK is the huge popularity of virtual tours of galleries and museums, downloadable jigsaw puzzles. By the way, if I'd have put my money into anything, it would have been into the hiring toilets and into the manufacture of jigsaws. I would have made a fortune over the course of the last 4 months. Downloadable recipes, top tips for gardening, all of these kind of things coming out of attractions. So that digital innovation has been one thing. Second thing is that when people have come back, when visitors have come back, it's often been a very, very emotional experience for them. They're going back to places that they've dreamt about, often literally dreamt about for the last 4.5 months, that are really special to them. It's where they've had first dates or gone with children, or it may well be the place that they're meeting up with their grandparents and their grandkids for the first time, an intergenerational tourist visit. So the very fact of going to a special place is becoming enormously emotional, so be prepared for that. It's also emotional for staff as well, particularly for those staff who've been furloughed or who haven't been working. So they've been physically distanced from the places, the collections that they love, that they have a real emotional attachment to, but also their colleagues as well, who they may not love necessarily, but they certainly like and they miss. And so coming back for them, if they're able to, has been a hugely emotional experience too, so don't underestimate that. A third thing, and this is peculiar to visitor attractions, is that we've seen a massive no-show rate from members and friends of attractions. So these are not paying visitors. These are people who've already paid their membership for the year or are a friend for the year. And they're booking multiple slots during the course of a week to guarantee themselves access, not having to pay for it, and then not turning up. Because they're just getting into the cycle, the mentality, if you like, of booking in a way that they've never had to before. So there are some of our gardens and museums and galleries who are currently still 3 weeks on, 5 weeks on, experiencing a 40% no-show rate from their members who are booking the slots but not actually turning up. In contrast, with only a 5-6% no-show rate from people who've actually bought tickets and who don't come at the last minute, and that's purely down to weather. So we're seeing a real difference in consumer behavior if you're a member of an attraction or if you're a paying visitor to an attraction. Third thing we're experiencing, massive retail sales. I mean, unprecedented. Some of our visitor attractions are reporting their best ever, record sales in their shops and retail outlets. And some of these shops and retail outlets could be literally a trestle table with a contactless payment system out on a lawn, but people haven't been able to spend physically for 3.5, 4 months, and therefore are going kind of crazy when they get to somewhere and want a souvenir of Liberation Day, their first Liberation visit. So that's another one. And then lastly, I suppose just for the sake of brevity, one of the things as a result of people going online to visit visitor attractions, I've been doing a lot of media work here in the UK on discussion programs and things like that about encouraging people to draw up a wish list of places that they can go to once they can. And it may be places that they love, they're familiar with, they haven't been to since they were kids, or they've never been at all, and this is a good opportunity. And so one of the things that we're seeing is that visitor attractions here in the UK are opening up to people who are different from that they closed to in early March. And I think that's amazing, because we always talk about getting different audience segments, different demographics coming across our doors. And this has almost, in a default way, in an unplanned way, prompted that in a way that some other activities and initiatives have not really realized. So that's a quick skate through of what we're seeing about 3, 4, 5 weeks in.
I mean, that was brilliant. To let everybody know, when we have panelists on, we don't actually really prepare. We just kind of off the cuff, just ask questions. And I have so much that I want to engage with you on, because what you mentioned is so topical. Janelle is here mentioning, for instance, the no-show rate.
You know, you can see here the signage and some of the conversation about opening in New Orleans. We have a great marketing team, and they found the right balance between effective communication of non-mission related safety things with our content. And also, you know, one thing that's really important is to walk through when you're preparing your signage package and look for these tight spaces, especially for museums that don't have as much open space as zoos and aquariums and outdoor areas. We debated a lot about signage. And I think, you know, it came through really well here, as you can see in this little piece here, for a very tight turn between two galleries.
But I have so many other pictures to share of your signage, because top notch. The nostalgia effect, the messaging, it's really clean, and I think that a great takeaway that everybody who's attending here will see is that your attention to detail and being on mission for your signage is really just jumps out at you. It's something that I'm excited to show more slides of pictures of your reopening. You know what, Becky? But I've been at your attraction. It's amazing. You know, understanding the journey and the walkthroughs and the story. But you have a lot of interactives as well, which could become a pretty big impediment with people not wanting to touch. And I what you guys did with your touch points is so simple yet effective. And this little guy's just using a stylus of some sort, right?
Yeah, so when before we even closed on March 14th to the public, we had about a week and a half, like everyone else did, where we were scrambling to try and figure out how to be a safe environment but stay open. And we are digitally interactive heavy because of all of the oral history content, and we allow our visitors to drill down on artifacts and Medal of Honor recipients and a lot of other stories and content through these stations that are throughout the museum. This little guy here is holding a card in his left hand. That's a dog tag card. And our guests use that to activate the story of a World War II person that they will follow throughout the galleries, which you've seen in other museums, right? I think everybody's very familiar, especially at the Holocaust Museum. They give you a personal account. And we have closed caption on most of our interactives because they were built after that was a requirement. But we thought we were going to have to invest tens of thousands of dollars and build apps so people could use their personal devices and find a way for them to plug into the audio. And once we realized that a stylus would work just as good as the finger, in a positive sense, but also that we could source them for 9 cents a piece. So it became a real no-brainer to go ahead and make them available and give them to every guest. Tell them, use them on the interactives. We don't want to have to put a paper sign up across every one of these kiosks when we reopen that says do not use for safety reasons. But you can use them in other places too. You can use them at the POS if there's a button to confirm a purchase. If somebody's not using, a ticketless card transaction, you can use them to press the elevator buttons. So they really turned out to be great for our setup.
And this is just a little tabletop that you've got that just reminds people to use it kind of throughout. Okay.
Rebecca, one of the questions that Helen had was, where did you find the styluses? Where did you source them from?
From China.
Okay.
I was blown. I mean, we're always thinking of, I got to clean this and do that. And I just think it was so interesting that it's such a logical thing. I mean, my mom uses these because for the life of her, she can't figure out how to, use her iPhone correctly with her fingernails, so she's got one of these. And it's just so great to think that it's easy to source. You hand them out, you're just giving them away. I think when people walk up to check in or something, right?
Exactly. Once a guest comes in, hopefully they've pre-purchased their ticket online at an appropriate quarter-hour time slot, and they get their dog tag card at a kiosk. They get the stylus when they get their little button that proves that they've got access, and they're on their way.
Now, you mentioned time ticketing. Someone is asking, it looks like Kate's interested to hear how that went, the time ticketing. Did it work? Did you have more people than you wanted, less people? Is it easy? What are your thoughts on it?
It worked well. We debated whether or not we needed to do quarter hour, and I think that definitely helped us because our guests are going through almost a predetermined path, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't have too much bunching of people at the earlier galleries before they started to spread out. But demand is really going to be our issue more than supply right now. 25% of normal capacity is our allowed limit for phase 1, which will extend into at least next week. And I can tell you right now that we won't get anywhere near that during phase 1. We had a great Memorial Day, but it was under 600 people on a day that we typically would have been pushing 5,000 to 6,000 people. The good thing for us, though, is that we're projecting that we may be to 15 to 20% of normal visitation by July, August. And so we're looking at June as our ramp-up month.
So we've had some questions about handing out the materials, some questions people were asking about a little bit more close-up. So I've been trying to zoom in. So it looks like you've done some of what we've kind of seen in most areas, spacing some people out, putting some markers down on the ground that tell you this is where you're supposed to stand. That's been pretty common in terms of setting up. But I do want to say we do know people are getting used to the plexiglass. I like this. It's clean. It's not obtrusive. It doesn't look messy. Someone asked, how are you handing out the stylus and the card without getting like 6 feet away? Is there something that you're doing there that's special to hand out these items?
Everyone's wearing masks, both visitors and staff, and they're handed out underneath the sneeze guard. So yes, the guest does walk up to the ticket counter and show that they made their online purchase. We're waiting for the scanners we ordered from you guys, and we're excited because once those come in, we can meet the guest at the door, and they won't even have to bother coming to the ticket counter to validate their purchase.
And that's really a change in how you've operated, right? So now you're pushing everybody online, you're doing time tickets. So now trying to get scanning in and separating them out, it's a new process that you've never really done. Is that right?
Right, but it's also going to help push the guests through the ticketing experience quicker, because when more of the guests were purchasing them up at the counter, they had decisions to make. They had to decide what time did they want to go see Beyond All Boundaries, our 4D interactive movie theater experience, and and did they want to buy the USS Tang experience on top of that? So by pushing them online, they're making all those decisions ahead of time. And we only found that on the first couple days, less than, or right around a third of our visitors were walk-up. 2/3 had followed our advice and made the acquisition online, and so they were past that ticket counter very quickly.
So I have a couple other slides that I just want to share. These were from the reopening, and this is one of your staffers, Cody, and we were chuckling about this earlier because we all know this is a difficult thing. In fact, Alan, one of the first conversations that I heard you have a few months ago was, how are we going to have a hospitality experience with our masks on? Our employees are number one to us. Alan said it, and they're a critical component of the experience. And it's so simple. I love how you just let the guests see what Cody really looks like.
In fact, I love that, because we still have problems with the mask. We're still getting customer service comments about, our staff aren't friendly enough right now. So that's brilliant. Good to see.
Yeah, that's, what is it, a 9-cent stylus and a photograph.
And a simple photo. When Angelina brought the team in for training for reopening, we just took their pictures and added them here with their name tags so that the guests would know these pleasant folks when they came in the door.
And I loved what Cody said when I took his picture, and I said, he said, well, I've got to let him see me smile somehow. And it was just so perfect. I loved it. It was perfect.
That's great.
And the guests were very compliant. One thing that we learned serendipitously by just going through opening day is having the right staff at the front door. We have a phenomenal security officer who we now are scripting his greeting to the guests because he just did it so right. And many people walked in the door without a mask on. It's still fairly casual around here. People don't all recognize the importance of wearing a mask. And when those guests came in the door, he would just manage it in a way that it wasn't stern or confrontational, but it was, let me offer you a mask today, and nobody turned him down.
That's great. It's a testament that, employees are really, they can make or break it, right? And we're focusing on them making the experience, and that's great. Awesome. Well, Becky, hang out. I'm sure we're going to get more questions. You might have to leave. Matt, you're gonna tell me immediately that your number one asset are your employees, and understanding how to engage your employees properly is really going to be key and paramount as we reopen. So Matt, what are your top 2 or 3? You got to do this when you reopen in terms of re-engaging your employees who might be furloughed. They might be sitting at home right now. What are the top 3 things we ought to be doing right now with our teams?
Well, I think first of all, when you look at the attitude to re-engage our guests, it's really a lot of the same things that we need to do to re-engage our employees, right? We're talking to our guests through social media. We should be doing the same thing with our employees. We're trying to educate our guests. We should be doing the same thing with our employees. To me, I think there's 3 areas that when you look at what every human being on this planet needs, those are the things that we really need to start with when it comes to engaging our employees. Everybody needs positive attention. So how can you reach out and provide some attention to your team members? It's not enough to just say, hey, call us if you need us, reach out and email us. That's not really enough right now. We have to be more proactive with that. So we need to be the ones to reach out and call someone, and I see you put the slide up again with the Zoom meetings. And I think there's definitely a real thing of Zoom burnout that some people are feeling right now. So pick up the phone, right? I've engaged with so many people over the phone over the last month or 2 And it's been really, really refreshing, quite frankly, because you don't have to look a certain way, right? You don't have to think about how you look and watch yourself speaking. You can just kind of relax and have a conversation. And I've had so many people that, you know, at the end of those conversations just say, wow, this is really what I needed. This was really inspiring. And a lot of times, all I really did was listen, right? So I think when we're providing positive attention to people, part of that is us just listening to them, right? Because so many of our team members and really ourselves, we've been going through this process of grief where, you know, maybe we denied that it was happening, or, you know, we got really angry, or, you know, we're feeling like there's something we can do to get out of it, or we're feeling depressed. And then finally you get to the end of the cycle of grief, and then you get to acceptance. And I would think that most of the people on this webinar today have probably gotten to that acceptance point of grief, because you've gone through it all and you're thinking, well, this is what it is. We need to move forward. We need to engage our guests. We need to engage our employees. And maybe you got there really quickly, but I would also say that maybe your team members didn't. Maybe your team members are still feeling denial. Maybe they're still feeling angry. So one of the best ways to deal with that is really just to talk to them, you know, engage with them, be empathetic. And I think that's all part of providing some positive attention. I think we also need to connect with people and allow people to connect with other employees. So important to connect with you as an employer, but really important to also, you know, get them connected with people that they are normally working with side by side. You know, there's such a social aspect to what we do that if we can get people connected, you know, playing some Zoom games, not too many, you don't want to have burnout, but, you know, getting them together, at least in some ways, maybe getting them on a phone call with one of their friends, or, you know, whatever. It's about you facilitating those connections. And then the last thing I think is really important is about purpose. You know, people have to understand what their purpose is when they come back to work. And we need to also facilitate ways that they can, you know, have some purpose right now. So some of the things that I've seen people do certainly are, you know, organizing volunteer trips. Or I think Six Flags just had a lot of their managers go out and thank the frontline workers. They put on their capes and they went out to grocery stores, and they were thanking the people who were out there, you know, providing us the opportunity to buy food so that we could feed our families. And I thought that was just a great way, not only to give back to the community, but also to kind of bring your team together, socially distanced, of course, wearing masks, wearing gloves, doing all the right protective things, but getting people an opportunity to share some gratitude, to feel some purpose. I think that's really, really critical. So those are my top three things: is provide some positive attention, connect with people, and give them some purpose so that when they come back, they'll be ready to go and ready to be productive.
I'm trying to do a mic drop with my mic here, but I can't. It's connected. It's connected to my.
We did a calculation based on our square footage, which was not required by the county, but was something that we did based on a 10-foot distance originally, and then a 6-foot distance. And so we know for our average family size, which is 3.2 people, that they take up 250 square feet. So we just did calculations that way, and we have staff monitoring how many people go into galleries. But we are not stopping people from going in. What we just say is, it's a little bit busy in this gallery. You may want to visit the sharks first and come back. But people can do what they want, and they self-police really well. And that's something that we learned, is that people are not needing the reminders. I have almost 300 signs in the aquarium right now. People know what they need to be doing, and they do it most of the time. So we're there as a friendly reminder, but not to police. That was one of the things that we trained our staff on, was to be a pleasant, welcoming, helpful attitude, and not the, there's too many people in here, police. We also did training on body language, reminding folks that because you have the mask, your body language speaks a lot as far as your friendliness and your tone and using your eyebrows. So we did a little bit of that too.
And Heather, how much did you say that you calculated each family takes up in space? That sounded like a really big number.
Right, so it was 250 square feet. So what we did is we measured the average number of people, and then there's just crowd science about what an average family space is and how they stand to each other. And then from there, we did a 10-foot perimeter around them on all 4 sides. So in an ideal world, people would be staying that far away. And if they all did that, how many people could we fit, or how many groups could we fit?
Got it. That's great. Thank you.
Hey, Alan, I'm curious to talk aquarium to aquarium now. Did you guys do some kind of calculation to figure out how many people could be in lost chambers at a certain time?
Exactly, and very similar. We looked at the calculation of our square area where 2 different floors, and went through that, and we had to talk to the government to produce that calculation to make sure that we kept the numbers. Yes.
And I would say both of you guys have a challenge. I mean, you guys saw my guest speaker here. She gets her hands on everything. Kids and whatnot, they want to touch everything. So
yeah,
as much as you're trying, I mean, I have the discouraged touch signs here, but you're not going to be able to stop all touching. I mean, so I'm curious, both Alan and Heather, how are you policing that? Are you letting people touch and then you're just cleaning after? What is the plan?
Yeah, you're seeing the pictures right there. We chose to say high touch point instead of do not touch on some of them. When the ones that were really difficult to disinfect, like our rope bridge, we said do not touch because we really can't disinfect that easily. The other ones were just high touch point, which meant use your own caution, and those are disinfected every hour. We have 6 staff dedicated to disinfecting the facility, so we're doing that every hour minimum. But that was something that I saw Utah's Hogle Zoo use, high touch point. I thought that was really nice. It just gives people sort of a reminder to not touch.
Yeah, we're basic.
I'm going to pass it off to you, Alan. So really, Sanya is this is some information I have here from March. Really seeing that you guys were able to start reopening, and your resort chain, you're starting to see that other resorts are starting to follow suit. Your Club Med resorts and others are opening, part of the faux tourism group. But Alan, let me just pass it to you. Maybe you could just tell us where you've been, where you started in the journey with Atlantis here. I mean, it looks like you guys were able to reopen after being closed for about 5 weeks. Do you mind just?
Yeah, we opened the aquarium. Look, I think the journey is very important to understand, because being in China, we were really where it all started. And basically at the 22nd of January is when we started to hear a little bit about it. And 4 days later, we'd closed our attractions. Now, we never closed the resort, but it was quite a very interesting time, because if people don't know, it was Chinese New Year here, which is our #1 time of the year. So we were looking at stepping onto 100% occupancy in the hotel. So basically, we had to close down. Our first priority at the time was looking after our staff and looking after guests in the hotel. And we had to implement things very quickly. There was no seeing what had happened around. It hit us hard. We had people from Wuhan, from the epicenter, who had come to Hainan Island where we are. And it was sort of like a bad movie. It was not a nice place to be. It was very uncomfortable. But our #1 priority went into looking after our staff. So we had to look at our staff, anyone who had maybe been in contact with people with the virus. Now, we have a staff housing. In China, you house your staff, feed your staff, go right through. We probably had 3,000 staff in our staff dormitory at the time. We recognised 50 staff, and then we had to individually quarantine them. We had to lock our staff down in the staff housing. The only staff who could leave our staff housing were ones coming to work or going back to work. We didn't allow them to leave. So really, the staff housing and our work became an isolation centre, if that makes sense. So going through the period, at that time, we were looking after our staff with our #1 goal that no staff got contaminated, and still today, we've been 100% successful with that. Our second major goal was, how do we keep all of our staff employed during this time? And luckily, again, we've to the stage now, we didn't have to put off any staff, which has made us, we've really achieved our 2 goals. We were monitoring guests within the hotel, mainly through temperature checks, of course, everyone with face masks, and a lot of hand cleansing around the place. Now, we opened the aquarium first, and that comes back to having a market and having a business. We opened the aquarium 5.5 weeks later on the 5th of March. And at the time, there wasn't a real market, but why the aquarium was important for us as an operation is it has such an operating cost. The aquarium still has to run 24 hours a day. We're still feeding the animals. We're still cleaning the tank. So what we found was a high percentage of our staff were working. Our operating costs were still there. Our life support systems were running 24 hours a day. So in opening the aquarium, we only had to add on another 6 staff through ticketing and internal operations because we knew the numbers were low and we had to look at what we're doing. But the most important thing was working with the government. In Hainan, we were lucky that they could turn things around pretty quick because it's an island south of China. They could monitor who was coming on and who was leaving. And basically, when we opened the aquarium, we worked with the government, and what had happened was there was a 2-week period with no new cases on the island. So that gave the government confidence. But we worked with the government very strongly on our cleanliness. We looked at what they were using as sterilizers. They came and worked with us with our sterilizing systems. So we sterilized the aquarium. And still with the systems, and still today, every day at 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, we close and we do a full cleanse with the government system of cleansing. Apart from that, we still do cleansing about every 15 minutes on important touch points, such as escalators, elevators, and various areas around like that. So that's an important part. Still today, everyone inside Lost Chambers must be wearing a face mask. So that's been very important, and we've had a very successful operation going through. At first, we lowered down our shows, but as we've moved on, we've been able to increase our shows. But what we've done is we've worked with the government how we do that, and we've been able to put extra staff in there as we increase our shows and spread it out. And what we've found as we've got more guests, our shows have been very important to move on with. The water park was a whole different ball game, and it was very good to just see a story of a resort opening with the hotel guests only. For the water park, we opened for hotel guests only, but we did not open 100% of the water park. We only opened the wave pool and the rainwater, so the play structure, and that was very, very important for us to move forward that way. We did that for our first week, then we generated and we opened up to the public. Now, opening to the public was very important, and it was very difficult to do at first because the most important thing was, 1, safety for our guests and our staff, but 2, as it was mentioned, many parks opened in China and closed a week later because they weren't making money, because it just wasn't the people around. So what we went through every attraction. We looked at the operating costs through staffing, through energy, through cleanliness that needs to be done, and we broke it down to an hour-by-hour cost. So basically, we could look at how we could open our rides. So we never opened at first the whole park at once. We opened certain areas, but we rotated it also very smartly, and rotating was very interesting to do because at first, people in our team, let's do half the park now, half the park later. But that doesn't work because people can do the half the park quite quickly, then they're standing around waiting. So what we do is we open sections and then we start to rotate. So one tower with 2 rides will be rotating tower to tower. And we looked at the most cost-effective way, looked at the cost, estimated the customers that we would have, the revenue that we generate. We opened with a lower attendance admission, so that was very important to understand. And from day one, we've been able to open and make money every day, which has been very, very critical. Now we've been moving forward very strongly. Our numbers are very close to the numbers a year to date last year. Revenues at about 80% year to date last year. So that's showing that things are moving very strongly. We had a very successful May holiday period where we held some promotions and did some very fun things of dropping ducks into the river. Now, we have had to be at 30% occupancy, but it is a large park and we've never quite hit that 30% occupancy. So We've had days just under 5,000, and 5,000 is our 30% all-day occupancy. So we've been very smart in doing that. Coming into summer, we need to work with the government, because where we are in summer, we're expecting one of the biggest summers ever. Because what's happened in China is people still cannot travel overseas, because if they come back, there's still quarantine periods. So we've got looking at the China market, and where we are pretty much 98% a China market. And what we find that we'll find over the summer period is the rich Chinese who cannot travel overseas, they will be traveling to Sanya. And we're finding, even as an example, a lot of the expats who are based in Shanghai, Beijing, they're coming to Sanya because they've got nothing to do over the period. And we're finding a big change in that. What we're finding now, which is a whole different market, it's been couples. Really hasn't been families, because the schools had a homeschooling. I feel that the Chinese want to get through this period to the summer, then we'll see the families. But it's been a completely different market of young people, but they've been good because they're spenders, and it's a whole different environment. I think what's important to understand is we've seen customers more relaxed in the water park because it's more outdoors, it's more of an open environment compared to within Lost Chambers, the aquarium, because it's an indoor environment. And we still see today it's slowly relaxing, but at first you saw people really did their own distancing without you having to implement it, because people had a concern. You could see a concern there with them. So that's been very important moving forward. And you know, for people who've just opened, it's an exciting time. For people who haven't opened yet, I think what's very important is you know, there's a lot of work there. What's been important to us is working with the government, understanding our operations, how to make sure, because it's important for our owners that we do make money. And by doing that, we've been able to, you know, keep our staff in a job. Now, we've been very close with our staff, letting them understand. So when we've opened, as an example for the water park, our staff are averaging now about 48% of their work salary, their work time and work salary. All senior management is on at least, has to be doing 80%. They can't be doing more, because we're looking after our costs to generate revenue so we can move forward in the future. And I think putting smart plans together, there's a bright sunshine at the end of this. And I think that's important, that people need to know that and get ready to move forward.
Alan, great update. I'm so encouraged. I want to ask the team from Integrated Insights, like, what do you do right now if you don't even have metrics involved with having capacities? What is your advice to everybody on the call? That's that 34% that doesn't know what to do next. What is your advice?
Yeah, so I think our advice is always to lead with the consumer. So we think that pricing is much more than just a binary decision to increase or lower price. We take a very holistic view at price, and we think that starts with the consumer. So understanding what are the motivators, what are the barriers for people right now. I think right now a key barrier is the people that want to feel safe, right? So if they can see the steps that you're taking to make their families feel safe, I think a key motivator for people right now is to get out. Families want to get out. I do think that there is a little bit of pent-up demand. And so as you think about those two things and, okay, what is really driving people's decisions, right? And Jared talked about this a little bit. And really what he talked about was, you know, the price value, right? You don't necessarily even want your consumers focused on your price point specifically. You want them focused on your value proposition. And so our recommendation to people is think about your consumer. How's your consumer thinking right now? And if price is not necessarily the issue around how they're deciding to go, right? If it's more about, I want to get out of the house, do I feel safe going there? Then really we're telling people resist that temptation to initially lower price, right? It's particularly making structural price changes that are going to be difficult to unwind in the future. So that's been our guidance, and really to think about it holistically. You know, hold for now. If you feel like you need to implement promotions and discounts, certainly do that. We encourage people, this slide that you're showing right now, these are kind of our 3 key strategies as we see them. And that last one there around holistic pricing, that have shelf-ready promotions, right? So build that arsenal of promotions that you feel like you may need, but don't necessarily come out of the gate with the firepower, right? So that's really our perspective. Scott, is there something you'd like to add to that?
Well, I think I'll just build on it by saying that, price stratification that Greg talked about, product stratification are really powerful levers, right? Yeah, as you think about what you have. So you want to inventory all of your core assets, right? I think about not only the 70% that are just holding on a static price point, and then the 34% that aren't. But how do you take all your assets and begin to leverage them to protect and grow your revenue, right, by understanding consumer behavior? So to reinforce Stephen's point, keep the consumer front and center, but then bundle your product, right, to optimize revenue and ultimately profitability with those that are going to be willing to come during this time period. I think I just want to reinforce the other thing that you said, Stephen, about you don't want to make any rash decisions now in this process that you're not going to be able to unwind in the long term. I keep hearing a lot of dialogue around the new normal. Well, we are in a new normal, but none of our clients today are looking at, they're looking at, hey, it may take me several years to get back to the types of volumes that I was seeing, but they're all looking at like they're going to. So,
Scott, that's a really good point. We actually had someone in the Q&A share. This was Roxanne. She shared that on a webinar last week. It was a tourism industry webinar that during SARS many years ago, this hotel resort drastically cut their prices, and they didn't reclaim back to their previous rack rate for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I think I was to say, just, hold on tight a little bit. And this, obviously there's different approaches here, but that's really to say, just wait a little bit and make sure that you need to do that to create the demand, right?
Well, I think you want to, understand capacity, right? I think I'm hearing a lot of, people are cutting capacity, today, right? Because of this new norm. So you want to align demand, and I think, Stephen, it goes back to the slide that you were showing, right? So you want to understand where that demand is likely going to come from, whether it's the geographic segments that are going to be most likely to return first, demographic segments. Well, I heard a lot about pass holders and memberships and the capacity that they are taking up. So I think in most instances, right, if your demand exceeds capacity, there's no reason to lower price, right? If your demand isn't to capacity, right, then there may be opportunities. But I can tell you, in my experience, pricing, price, often isn't the primary consideration, in the purchase decision, right? I think a lot of it comes around, the quality of the product, the service you're delivering. So, Jaron, you were talking about value, right? I think you try to align your value proposition, with your pricing. I think trust, the reputation of the brand, all come into play. But in my experience, lowering price, in most cases, it's been very difficult to actually incent enough incremental demand to recoup the dilution risk.
Yeah.
So, but you have promotions and have them on the shelf and ready to go, right? And the only thing you have to do then is drop in whatever level of a discounting that you need to actually take and drive the level of demand you need.
Scott, one of the things Scott just said, I think is really important, that just lowering price a lot of times is not enough to incent demand, right? Especially if you're just dropping the price, particularly if you're dropping it at the gate. We find once people make it to the gate, they're there and they're willing to pay. Dropping price at the gate, not going to increase any demand. What can drive demand are messaged promotions that have strong calls to action, are tightly fenced and targeted at specific segments. We find that those are much more successful at driving incremental demand than just a structural price decrease. Because a lot of times, once people are in that process of purchasing, whether that's online or at the gate, they're pretty well through the idea that they want to do this, is the experience they want. And so that little bit of a delta in the price, not always enough to move them in the direction.
But I'm before we get there, one of the things I really love about this story is that looking at this list here, so many, I mean, if you're a zoo, if you're a museum with a lot of interactives, if you're, when Jose gets to talk, he's going to talk a little bit about, I know they have a lot of attractions. What I love about Extreme Action Park is that you have all the elements that the biggest theme parks have, the smaller FECs have, zoos and aquariums and museums. So really being able to watch and learn and see what you did is really going to help everybody in our communities because you have a little bit of everything. And I love that about, I mean, I'm looking here at your food locations because every single aspect of your business was impacted by COVID. And I think your signage is great. I'm gonna jump ahead here to the next sign. I mean, you're a marketer, so
Yeah.
Of course signage is going to be front and center. But you guys did a great job of really just, I mean, it looks like you probably spent days and nights printing and laminating. So let's talk about your sign package and what you guys did there.
Right. So, you know, as we all know, people don't read signs. We know it, right? So we tend to lean towards colors and shapes, right? So what will attract their attention? So the park itself is large and has a lot of bright colors, a lot of graffiti art, a lot of lights and different colored lights. So we found yellow. We just went yellow. Yellow is a safety color, and yellow you can see on our polished concrete floors, and yellow will stand out in the park. So we made everything related to safety and reminding and importance for them to notice in yellow. So we got a lot of yellow paper. We did a lot of printing. But yeah, we have a really awesome graphic artist on our team, and he made these custom people, all types of people, and they are all wearing their masks. And it kind of, it pushed the focus too on our clean team. This year, this is great. As you can see, the yellow pops on the, at the track. This is our cadet track. So this is right here. We put up the sneeze guard in between where our team member is, and then we have the reminder signs. And then at every location, at every attraction, we put in specific rules that parents or attendees or anybody can read that says, this is what we're doing. Also on the website. So we basically furthered it not only before you arrive, but while you're at the park. Let's say you didn't read it. We want to show it to you. We want you to know this is what we're doing. And we are making sure that we're doing everything that's on that list. That is our checklist. That is what we're offering you, the guests, to ensure that, everything that we can possibly do to keep you safe. So, and of course, reminding them, please wear your face mask and wash your hands and stay 6 feet apart. But this one is a good example of the specifics at the track.
And this is the clean team. Is that they're wearing the yellow safety vests?
Yes, this was one of our favorite projects in all of this. We designated, so normally our cleaning crew wears a very grayish colored shirt. You kind of don't want to see the cleaning crew, right? I mean, in any facility, normally they're just kind of in the background doing what they have to do behind the scenes. But now with all of this, we want to see the cleaning crew. So we got vests, and we actually labeled them Extreme Clean Team. And their purpose is to be there in the face of the customer, available at any time for a complimentary wipe down, for an extra cleaning. What we did is we put them on, we have designated people that will roam certain zones of the park, but also in every department we'll have somebody there. So it makes it difficult for staffing, but for now, some people are doing a little bit of a double duty. As we grow and have more hours and have more team members come back, we can hopefully keep this team more independent. But for now, like my partner, I'm working the skating. So my partner, he's wearing the Extreme Clean Team vest, and he goes out systematically and will clean all of the railings in the skating rink. And again, is there identifiable, willing to help, willing to give an extra cleaning, because the truth is you don't know if it's clean unless you see it clean, right? So if that guest wants that extra effort of, hey, do you mind? I'd feel better seeing that you just swipe. Absolutely, let's do it. So we do it a lot. You know, that's why the sanitizer stations are right there, so a guest can see. Look, I'm washing my hands, and then I'll take your card. I'll swipe your card. I'm giving it back, right? So it's all very open and in your face, and it needs to be right now, and that's fine. And I hope it continues that way. To be honest, I don't mind if we can keep it up. Let's keep it up.
So, Elizabeth, obviously that's a lot of newness that you're talking about, right? That you weren't doing before. What did you do to kind of prepare the team for that? I mean, how did you kind of implement this new way of operating?
It was really a team effort. A lot of our team, we listened to our team. A lot of our team, when we started planning our reopening, we brought them in together, and you know, they had a lot of these ideas too. And they wanted to do it. They wanted to make the guests feel welcome. They wanted to be able to have the ability to clean as needed. They understand what's going on. And I think, like I said, a lot of these ideas came from them. So it was easy to train. It was easy to get it implemented because they wanted to do it. And it made sense. This slide here, this is great. The girl in the picture, she was just fun. I thought it was a funny photo. So basically, this was during one of our training days before opening. We started spacing out the tables in our food court, and two of our team members just happened to sit down at the table, and I thought it was a nice photo to kind of demonstrate about how spacing is and what we're doing in the park, how we're separating. On the table are those little cards that we made that shows, you know, this table is sanitized, this table is waiting to be sanitized, kind of, you know, something visual again to help people see that it's been done, or in case we don't get them all the time, you know, in case we can't wipe it down before they get there, they know that it's been wiped. Something to identify that to them. This is one of our other team members installing, you know, more hand sanitizer stations throughout the park. But the statues, we actually brought those in. We have a bunch of statues around the park. We have like Big Boy, and we have the Kung Fu Panda. So we put them up and around to kind of help with some of the distancing and to make it not feel so empty. It was just fun. We thought we'd bring them out to keep people separated a little bit.
That's great. I love those table cards. I think what's really great about them is, obviously I've seen attractions that's like, hey, don't use this table, right? You know, somewhat of a negative message, but I mean, obviously we need to make sure we have the spacing. But the one that the reassurance of like, hey, I've cleaned this table and it's ready for you, I think is a great way to instill that safety and security that folks are really wanting, even though they didn't see the person wiping the table down, right? They know that that's happened. That's great.
Yeah, we thought it was a nice touch.
You that have a dynamic pricing model, because that will really maximize your revenues.
So I think our special guest is here. So hold on a second. So sorry, my kids are freaking out. So
yeah.
All right. So we have a special guest all the way from the Cincinnati Zoo. So what I'm going to ask is Bill D'Angelo. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Bill can, and hopefully everybody can see our special guest. My screen is not being shared any longer.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sam. I'm with the Cincinnati Zoo, and I'm about to turn the camera around today because I'm going to reveal that it's a surprise, but I'm here with Jenna, and she's on our Africa team.
Hey, guys.
And she is with two special participants that are going to be joining us for the last part of today. And today we have Fiona here with us.
So yeah, I'm happy to tell you guys all about them, but I welcome any and all questions. Feel free to send them in or yell them out, or however it works with this. For anyone who doesn't know about Fiona, she is the only premature hippo that we know of to have survived. She was only 29 pounds when she was born, and they're typically closer to 75 or 100 pounds. She was 6 weeks early, and it was kind of a fight to keep her alive. wasn't able to stand her nurse. She's very busy now. So we did have to step in and help BB raise her. So she was raised under human care. For about 11 months, we were bottle feeding her, but she was reintroduced to her mom and dad when she was about 5 months old and has been doing great ever since. So because of her cuteness and her social media following and all the stories we shared about her, she is very popular. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard of her or seen her videos, but I'm happy to tell you all about her. But does anybody have any questions right off the bat?
So everybody, you are welcome to unmute yourselves if you have a question, or we're going to take down the PowerPoint in the background. Hopefully that will help everybody out as well. Bill's working on that. But you guys are welcome to ask your own questions if you want.
I saw one that just popped up, and Jenna, the question was asked is, how did BB do when Fiona was reintroduced to her?
BB did amazing. We took it really slow and followed a lot of guidelines that we do with other animals when we introduce them to one another. We have what's called a howdy setup. So there is a gate with 1x1 holes in it, so not big enough for BB to get to Fiona or Fiona to get her head somewhere in BB's face. And we just kind of monitored them and waited for them to choose to lay next to one another and eat next to one another. We didn't see any aggression. So after about a month of that, we actually started off by putting giving Fiona access to BB with the doors kind of cracked, if you will, so that Fiona could fit in and go in and out, but BB could not follow her. So she felt threatened she could run away. So of course, the first time we introduced them, it was very scary for us, a little nerve-wracking. But we had keepers everywhere, different areas for Fiona to leave if she wanted to, and of course, someone on the doors, so if we needed to close them, we could. Fiona did run to one of her caretakers. When she first saw BB, she was a little bit spooked, but she, after quite a little amount of time, probably a minute or so, she did decide to go see BB again. And then ever since then, they have done great. Fiona stuck her whole head in BB's mouth. She was much smaller, put almost half her body in there. So that was terrifying, but that was their way of communicating and kind of getting to know one another. And BB was fantastic. She never showed any sort of aggression. Fiona actually surprised us all and did really awesome with hippo behavior. She sat, which is a submissive behavior that young or submissive hippos will do. So she actually was acting appropriately as a baby hippo, even though she had been raised by humans.
And I saw another one pop up. And now, what does a baby hippo eat?
Baby hippo nurses, so typically they would actually nurse underwater most of the time, and they'll do that for about 9 to 10 months typically, and then around 3 or so months they'll start eating solids. So Fiona was bottle fed until she was 11 months old, but she was eating solids. After, probably 4 or so months, we had to make sure that her digestive system was, working correctly and well developed. Since she was so premature, we weren't sure how all that was going. So we started her off on grain that was soaked in water. Kind of like if you had a puppy or a kitten at home, you would soak their food if the kibble was too hard for them to chew. We gave her cut up Timothy hay, which is just a type of grass. So they are grazers. They would eat a lot of grass in the wild. They come out at night and graze when the sun goes down. So they are nocturnal. And then she also gets all sorts of veggies. Her favorite seems to be romaine lettuce. They get yellow squash and cucumber as a part of their diet on a daily basis.